Welcome back to the Retire Young podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the Retire Young podcast on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Al was just shedding some light on these financial markets because we have a lot of volatility right now. We're seeing, obviously, big up days, big down days. It's kind of like a roller coaster, and you got to ask yourself, what do I do? Well, a lot of people ask us, has the stock market bottomed? Well, what you should be asking right now is you should ask yourself, do you have a proven strategy that defines your risk and proper entry points of where to get in, but also where to get out? That's what you really need to be asking yourself. And that's where it all comes down to opportunities in these markets. Al, you're seeing a lot of opportunity because we have big up days and down days because you can profit in both directions. Just explain a little bit about some of the opportunities that you're seeing right now and how people can really take advantage of this financial market.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of opportunities. If you're a short-term trader and you understand how the markets function, there's some great opportunities. For those of you that have maybe a longer-term perspective, there's going to be a time that where you have opportunities to buy at prices that are basically, as I mentioned before, kind of those bargain basement prices. That's what Wall Street does. That's what guys like Warren Buffett do, and is buying at a point. It's basically doing what you know you're supposed to do, buying low and selling high. But again, it's being able to identify when something happens that's factual, and as I mentioned before, that's when you have the imbalance between the relationship between supply and demand. And very simply, we're just letting the institutions do all the basic work. They understand very well what the value of something is. They understand very well what the profit target should be for them. So all we're doing, we're really just buying in demand zones in uptrends that are started by the institutions, and we're selling in supply zones and downtrends, again, which are started by the institutions. But I started to talk about the economic issues, and every economic shock like we have right now leaves a legacy. It's not going to be any different this time. Back in the 1970s, we had the oil supply shock, and as a result of that, look at all the things that are being done as far as energy efficiency. We've got wind power, solar power, electric cars. In 2008, when we came out of that last recession in March of 2009, the FANG stocks led the march back up again. So, and there'll be different things this time. We've got a lot of international manufacturers that might have to rethink where they buy or produce their goods. Look, people are working from home. I'm speaking to you from home right now. So teleworking options, that's going to be an issue that, an area that might be worth looking at. Schools maybe have to be educating more online. What about shopping habits? The malls, online shopping. The bottom line is there are going to be a lot of opportunities, and they may be new things that weren't around before. But I think really events like this emphasize the importance of having multiple sources of cash. Most people that are listening have relied on one job to allow you to kind of live the lifestyle that you're living now. But there's a smaller group that's accepted the fact that one job just isn't enough. The income from one job isn't enough, and you have to develop additional sources of cash. I think that's one of the reasons we have this wealth divide in the country. And for most people that are doing this with multiple sources, it's not multiple jobs, but they're getting that from the financial markets. When we talk about the markets, we're not just talking about the stock market. We talk about the futures market, the Forex market, and the options market. And then you need to have the knowledge to be able to do those things. A lot of them are maybe things that you haven't heard of, or maybe you've heard of them, but you don't know how to invest in them. And I think that's one of the mistakes that the public makes, the novice trader makes, is either they don't understand and those are leveraged assets that I'm talking about. Futures, Forex, and options are leveraged assets. Either people don't understand them, so they don't use them, or worse yet, they don't understand them and they do use them and they use them wrong.
And hey, Raul, real quick there, we talk a lot about financial literacy. It's just not knowing what those are, but let's just go a little deeper on that. You have to have the knowledge on it, but you also have to learn the skill, and that's where it comes down to the education.
Right, and the education really it's a combination of things, Josh. It is knowledge. You have to have the knowledge, obviously. But if you don't know how to use the knowledge and you don't know how to use it at the right time, well, then it's of no value to you. So what we do is not only show you how to, what the knowledge is, what the basics are, the facts, the mechanical parts of putting a trade together, but then we show you how to build the skills to use it. And that's something that's an ongoing process. The people that are making money now, the people that are doing very well, they have the skills. But, it's no different than a surgeon, for example. You can't just decide to perform surgery on somebody if you don't have a medical degree and go out and do it. You have to go through school. You have to get the knowledge. And then you watch somebody else do it that has done it successfully numerous times. And then when you do it under the watch of someone like that. The same thing is true in education, in financial education. There's the educational part of it, the knowledge part of it. And you mentioned earlier that a lot of the things we're doing now, we're doing online. Well, we do both. We have classrooms where people can come in and have interaction with instructors. We do these classes online. So events like this, crises like this, that doesn't mean that you can't get the education. You're just going to get it maybe in a little different way. And then when things settle down, maybe come in and take a class from somebody who you can spend time with face to face. But you also want to make sure you have access to support in mentoring, somebody who can help you. And I can guarantee you that during the last few weeks, people that thought they knew how to invest ran up against some things that totally caught them off guard. And wouldn't it be great if you had somebody you could contact right away and say, hey, what's going on? How do I handle this? How do I maneuver this kind of a situation? So that's their components of education. There's tools, and it also should be something that is lifelong because things change over time, and we're seeing that now.
It does.
You want to make sure you
it sure does.
Have access to what's going on, what's new, and that's going to help you take advantage of these different opportunities.
Yeah, and you have to go with the market. No one's ever going to beat the market, and that actually comes down to a little bit of innovation that you were talking about. You said we do these online. We also have these in the classroom that we've been doing for so long, and it's not like we've innovated there. We've always had it. It's just we've been able to pivot, and with these times that are happening now, we're still able to serve our Retire Young family, to help with the education, to learn the skill, to reach those goals that you have. And that's what it all comes down to, is financial literacy. It's making better investing decisions. Now, Al, we talk a lot about these leveraged asset classes, the futures market, the Forex market that you mentioned, even the options market. You mentioned a lot of people just don't know what they are. Explain what those leveraged asset classes are, the futures market, Forex market. Explain them, but why you may want to shift and utilize those, maybe other than the stock market, just to minimize any risk.
Right. Well, yeah, and most people, when they hear about options, for example, or futures, what they think about is, oh, that's risky. That's too risky. I'm not going to do that. Well, it's because they don't know how to use them. And the foundation of our education is risk management, no matter what you're trading. The number one thing that we have our students identify is the maximum amount of risk that they will take in any individual trade. It should be a small amount. But then we teach them how to manage that risk, how to identify and manage it. Futures, Forex, and options, one of the great things about them is that they trade with leverage. So you can have an account, say $1,000, $2,000 account, and you're controlling maybe $50,000 to $100,000 worth of an asset. So you have that leverage. And they trade, futures and Forex trades 24 hours a day, so you don't have to be available just during the 6.5 hours of the market, the stock market. With futures, you're trading things that, like the major stock markets, like commodities, oil, gold, silver, currencies, interest rates, a number of different things. So you have some versatility there. And basically what you're doing is you're looking into the future and saying, I think this is going to be worth more in the future or less in the future. And then Forex is where you're looking at the difference in exchange rates between two different currencies. And again, trades 24 hours a day with 50-to-1 leverage. So you've got, with options, you have what we're going to call regular leverage and dynamic leverage. So you can trade more than you have in your account, and the returns that you get are going to be, in most cases, multiples of what the market is doing. Just kind of a basic rule of thumb with options is every 10% move in the underlying asset, because you're trading options on something. It could be stock. It could be exchange-traded funds. It could be futures contracts. and the underlying goes up 10%, the option should be up about 100% or more. You can use options as protection. And not many people knew that you could have an insurance policy on your portfolio or individual stocks. A lot of people that went through what we have just gone through or are going through didn't see their accounts draw down very much, maybe not at all, because they had protection on their portfolios. But they also knew that they could use these assets. Options can be used to make money in up markets, down markets, sideways markets, or what we'll call a range-bound market.
Real quick, you mentioned something that a lot of people may have not understood there. You said down markets. Explain how to profit in a down market. What is that?
Well, in a down market, you can use what we call put options. It's an option that goes up in value when the market goes down. There are exchange-traded funds, which are baskets of stock, similar to a mutual fund, but it trades like a stock. And there are inverse ETFs. In other words, it is trading on an underlying, let's say, the S&P 500. A regular ETF, if it mimics the S&P 500, if the S&P is up 10%, that ETF will be up around 10%. And inverse goes the opposite. So if the S&P 500, say, is down 10%, the inverse could be up as much as close to 10%. So that's a way of making money in a down market. Shorting is another way of doing it. That's one of the things that we teach our students. So there are opportunities to take advantage of these down markets. You don't have to sit on the sidelines. And I think ask yourself, and I think you know the answer to this, do you think everybody lost money when this market went through this recent crash? The obvious answer is no. And if they didn't, they're obviously using something different than you're using. Wouldn't you like to know what that is? Because this, unfortunately, is not going to be the last time we see a market go through something like this. We're always going to go through crises of some sort. We have been kind of spoiled by a record bull run that we went through, and we kind of forgot how to play defense, or the fact that we might need to play defense.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the time to be able to do that. And again, it all gets down to the right education that teaches a number of different things.
You're
Not
exactly
just
right.
how to make money in stocks when the market goes up, how to make money in different directions, but how to use different assets. For some people, it might be futures. For some, it might be options. For some, it might be Forex. For some, it might be stock. But understand that what we do is customize an education plan for you based on what your goals and your expectations are, and how to get you there the safest way and the quickest way possible.
And that's because everybody's different. Everybody has different goals in life. And I mean, just let's relate that to our current situation with a lot of people may have lost jobs. Well, it's important to have a backup plan. Now is the time to have that backup plan. First off, I mean, now we might have more time to start learning these skills. But, I mean, now is the time to act if you haven't acted before. And it's all about having multiple sources of cash. That way you're not just stuck to just one, so you don't have these things where, you may not have a job or may not have an income coming through. Al, what do you got coming up next?
Well, you know what? Unfortunately, a lot of people probably have seen their 401ks be hit. I don't mean to make light of it, but instead of a 401k, maybe it's a 201k or your IRA. And so let's talk about what you can do now to recover.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. Don't forget to check out our website at retireyoungaudio.com.